Welcome to Salted Up. Today we have Chris Lizotte here, worship leader and musician, to share with us his journey and his life and give us tips on how to manage the dark night of the soul. What I would love for you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is share a little bit about who Chris Lizotte is.
Well, I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband. Most of all, I am a child of God who has this great life right now. I'm in a great season with my wife and I and our kids and our grandkids. And, you know, I'm 61, blessed to have lived 61 years. Who knows what's next, but my fate is sealed, so I'm good with that. You know, like whatever comes in life, I have the hope of heaven, and so I have this place of peace in my life where. You know, don't ask me, you know, if one of my kids gets in the hospital, what I'll feel like or something. But right now, everything's pretty great.
Life is in a very sweet place for you.
It is.
Right now.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your music career, about your life as a worship leader, and what that's been for you?
Well, I've been a Christian since I was 15, and so I've always kind of been in gospel music, you know, except when I turned 21-ish, about me and a group of friends moved to LA, and we were trying to, you know, make it in music, but with the gospel with us. But I think slowly the world and their surroundings of Hollywood and all that took its toll on us a little bit. And then one of my friends, close friends who lived right here in Sacramento, passed away, got cancer and died. He was a really healthy surfer, lifeguard guy. You never thought he would be the one. And so that kind of changed my plans, like made me just go, I just need the Lord. And so I moved away from LA and back to Orange County and just started going to church and again. And then from then on, it was just people came into my life that mentored me, you know, that like took me under their wing and helped me to figure out how to lead worship and how to do what I love to do, but in a different way, you know.
Absolutely. This was a gift that you had. So at a very young age, you realized, oh, I'm talented at this.
I don't know if I realized how talented I might have been or not been, but I did realize that I loved it.
You did.
Yeah, like I just was like, this is what I want to do. When I was in my early 20s, a little bit, my dad was a builder, home builder, and I was just went to work as a grunt and just whatever I could do, you know, and I didn't love it. I liked it. It was okay, but I didn't love it like I did music. And so that was always a battle until I just jumped ship and said, I'm going all in with this, you know. So. And thankfully.
That's bold. As a young person to go all in.
You know, I wonder, I had all these safety nets around me, you know, I'm still young. You know, mom and dad are still around and all that, but it's bolder, I think, as you're older and you have kids and you have bills to pay and a house to pay, you know, all that stuff. So for me, it wasn't that hard of a decision. It was just more of like, you know, and I had my best friends. We were all in a band together, so we were not alone.
Sounds like doors closed, and then a very tragic event happened, and that changed your worldview. And what mattered to you?
It did. Yeah, it made me think that could be me, and so it made me think about what are my priorities, and more than even thinking about my priorities, it was more of like, where do I feel the safest, or where do I feel the most peace, you know? And I felt, I just felt that was where I was supposed to go. I knew I was made for the church. It was weird.
Tell us a little more about that.
Well, I think we're all made for the church, to be honest, the whole human race. But I remember when I grew up at the Vineyard in Anaheim, John Wimber used to tell us, go out and be light and darkness, you know, salt and light, or salt, you know, salt and light to the world. And but he said, don't take a foot out of the church. Leave one foot in the church. Because the church is your family, and it's your support, and it's there's people that love you and are praying for you and on the mission with you, you know. And so we're all meant for that. We're all meant to have community, and that there's a safety in that. And when I first moved to LA as a young person, I took my other foot out of the church, and I was just thinking, it's kind of like that parable about the being removed from the vine, and how as fruit we just don't have that nourishment anymore. We just dry up, you know. And it's like being disattached from the vine is what I did. And so I just said, I gotta attach myself to the vine again, you know?
And that has been a source for you throughout your life now.
Yeah.
Of support, of comfort, of knowing that they've got your back, and you've kept one foot in the church.
Yeah. And it's not always easy. Church is hard sometimes, you know, because as everybody in just their natural family knows, like, family can be tough. But you're still, no matter what, you're still family. Like, nothing you can do to separate yourself takes you away from the fact that you're blood, you know. And so you got to choose to stay in and fight for it, or get out of it. But what does that mean when you get out of it? You're not helping them or you. You know?
Well, as somebody who's been in the church for so long and has experienced what church culture can be like, there's been a lot of changes over the last few years with churches, right, since COVID, and a lot of people stepping out or wanting that redefined, right?
Yeah.
Seeing this, and as a worship leader, what are you noticing in all that?
I wonder if God is using it to remind us that He asked us to follow Him, you know, and not to follow man or a man, you know. And I think it's hard, you know. A lot of churches, I think, after COVID have really suffered or changed their purpose, but maybe God's using it all to remind us that I asked you to follow me. You know.
What I'm hearing in all this is a loyalty and a tenacity and a commitment that you have.
Well, I know what it feels like to not be under the shadow of His wing. I know what that feels like, and I don't want that feeling again.
And does that go back to when you were in LA, or were there other times in your life where you felt unprotected?
Well, there was other times, but it was kind of you know, I don't want to say that God wasn't in it the whole time, because He was, you know. Like he allows everything that He allows, you know. And so that feeling of being alone, He uses it. Seems like, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself, but He used it in my life to realize my deep need for relationship with just Him, instead of living out my Christianity through my identity of being a worship leader or being a part of a church even, or anything like that. It's all good and all part of it. It's just that I think sometimes, at least for me, I realized that a lot of times he was saying, well, it's a good vision you have or a good mission you're on, but can I come too? Kind of thing. And so I've kind of made my mistakes there, but hopefully learning.
God had a way of taking you through seasons that were difficult to keep, and this might be simplifying it, but to keep you humble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds like you received those experiences, even if they were hard.
Yeah.
Do you think these internal experiences with God, these wrestlings at times, this aloneness at times, this being humble at times, has contributed to your ability to connect greater with worship, others, and understanding what, as you're leading others into worship, what they're going through?
I would hope so. I mean, we've all heard the analogies, or what are those called, the parables of, the diamond and the coal and the refining fire and all those things. So, you hope that some of the tough things you go through in life make you come out shining brighter and so yeah, I think so. I think there's something about getting older too that gets you more acquainted with your mortality and your your frailty of your body breaking down, or knowing, like, I've just heard some of the wisest things from the oldest people. They just and then they get to a place where they just don't care anymore what people think about them, which is a gift. It's a massive gift,
I'm excited about that one, right? Say whatever I want, won't even, right?
Yeah, with your pants around backwards.
Who cares? Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because I always think about that verse, how we must become like these to enter the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about the little children, and how, whether we like it or not, we're going to end up in diapers, or whatever. Like we're going to, we go from children and growing, and then we go back to being dependent again. We become independent, and we're get set in our ways or whatever, and that independence can be unhealthy. And then when we get dependent again, it's sweet. Sometimes it's not sweet, but most of the time it's like you become humble and sweet again. Like you see these old people and you go, oh, look at how sweet, man. That old couple holding hands or whatever, and you just, their identity is behind them now. Like that successful business guy, that doesn't mean that much anymore. Eternity is ahead.
And there's a contentment with right now.
Yeah.
There's no more striving.
And there's the hope of the not yet. Which is, I wish I lived more in the hope of the not yet my whole life. Like that mindset to me is probably would have helped me a lot.
What would have been different if you had done that?
Well, I wouldn't have wanted people to like me so much, or I wouldn't have spent so much time trying to impress people or trying to be great, and I don't mean people shouldn't strive to be good at what they do. It's just that, what's your motive? Is your motive to be good for the sake of others, or is it because I want people to? Sorry, I just tapped on this. Or is it, or is it to just impress people or something? I don't know. And I've done that a lot.
Yeah. When you find yourself moving into that mode, because that's easy for any of us, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in a really solid place. We feel grounded, we feel clear, we feel connected, and then something shifts.
Yeah.
When those times happen, I'm hearing that God would bring you back in through difficult experiences at times.
I bet he does it with everyone.
Yeah.
He just loves us so much that he might let it go for a while, but eventually, when he says pride comes before a fall, sometimes I wonder if he's letting that fall happen because of his mercy. Yes.
Many wouldn't have considered, and maybe this is an internal place, because the motive of the heart, but when you look at the falls of your life, or if there were any.
Yeah.
Right.
There is.
Well, if any of those you'd want to share what they were, and then where God's mercy showed up.
Well, when I was back in the 90s, was kind of like the hype of Christian music and record labels, and being in that world, you're automatically, or I was, you're wanting to get recognized or known for what you do and all that stuff, and it's a weird world that nobody does it good in, really. And if they say they do, or if they do, they're probably not being totally honest. It's just fame and money, as we all know. We all know that it's just not good for humans. And I never was like famous or never had a bunch of money, but I've thought in my head, like, I want to do this, or I want to do that, I want to do this, and I was, part of you has some good motive, like you want your songs to be a blessing or this or that, but part of you is just like, to be honest, it's like, it feels good when people think you say you're great or this or that, and we just humans don't do good with that. And then comfort, money, and everything you ever wanted and all that stuff. I've just seen, I know some of the most miserable people have everything you could want in life. And
So recognizing that even though it's enticing, the fame, to be recognized, or the comfort of money and having, maybe a song hits big, or whether it's small or large, the longing got activated.
Yeah, and it's never enough.
Yeah.
You could ask, I have friends that have had big songs and this or that, but it's never, it scratches an itch for a little bit, but that's about it. It's always never enough. You always want more.
It's unquenchable.
It's probably like it's like drug addiction or alcohol or anything like that, or it's probably, unquenchable.
Absolutely.
Good word.
And all humans can have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so God comes in and checks us and humbles us.
Yeah.
So you've, gone through the 90s and when it was so popular, and then what did you notice happened with Christian music after that in your own life?
Well, I started going down the road of being a worship leader, and so it kind of, even though I had a publishing contract with the Vineyard, and so I was still in it, but it wasn't like a typical record deal where they're promoting your career. They promote your songs, and so it's more faceless, and that's probably healthier. You still have some of those battles, you know, but it's definitely better. And then I just dove into being a worship leader. I had some really great mentors in my life that shouldn't have helped me, but they did. I only say that because I say that there was a lot better people at what I did than me, and for some reason some of these guys took me under their wing, and it was really cool, and so I was really grateful for that. And they're still, like, one of them, my biggest probably mentor. I have two that are still like my best friends, you know. And
what were some of the main things they've taught you?
Well, this one guy, Eddie Espinosa, do you know Eddie Espinosa? He wrote that song, Change My Heart, Oh God.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a vineyard worship leader back in the day. He was like with him and John Wimber and Carl Tuttle and those guys, they were all together. And he took me under his wing and said, just come strum with me, you know. And I was probably in my late 20s, and he would play pretty expensive chords, you know, and I couldn't keep up. But he goes, it doesn't matter, just play, you know. And so there's a lot of times where I was strumming like half an inch away from my strings, because I was like, if I hit my strings, I was hitting the wrong chord. And but I would just get to watch him, being next to him, and he would say to 3,000 people on Sundays, you know, that when that church was packed, he would just say, I'm going to worship the Lord if you guys want to come along with me. And he would literally just be lost in it. He wasn't leading songs. He was like, I'm going to worship the Lord, follow me. That's all he would do. You're welcome. And I'd see him cry, I'd see him not be able to sing. And I was like, that's how I want to do this. I want to love Jesus. I don't want it to be song leading. And so that's what I strive for to this day, is I strive to be like that. And then I have another buddy who he's never had a song published, he's never led worship at a big conference, never done anything. But when I first came to the vineyard in Laguna Niguel, he was the main worship leader. And then I came along, and I had made records for Vineyard, and I'd done some things, and I just got elevated right away above him. And I would have probably been defensive or been like, who's this kid, you know, or whatever. And he was like, well, that's the right choice. And then he started serving and playing with me. And to this day, when I lead worship places, he's like, hey, I'll come play with you, you know. And I'm like, what? You know, he's 10 years older than me now, but he's to this day one of my very closest friends, and I'm just like, this guy, I want to be like that guy, you know. He just laid down his life, literally, in a way. Not literally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. He put himself, he was willing to step aside.
He stepped aside, and it's like he wasn't thought about too well, I think, or there wasn't a lot of thought in that process when that happened. Like, he probably should have been asked, or, you know, or like, what do you think about this kid, or this, you know, type of thing, and it just happened. And I don't blame anybody in that, it's all good, but it was just like, the way he reacted was not human. It was the most kind, thoughtless, or selfless, thoughtful way, where I go, if that's not a sweet aroma to the Lord, you know, like the guy's life is worship, you know, and that's like the goal, if your life is worship, then
Yeah.
whatever you do, what comes out of you,
Yeah.
it's like, so it's nice to, I still call him my worship leader. You're my worship leader. Like when we play together, he's not even singing, he's playing a keyboard. No, you're my worship leader. And then there's this other woman who you guys might know, Lynn Miller. Do you know Lynn Miller? She was the children's pastor at Laguna Niguel Vineyard.
Okay.
She has brittle bone disease since she was born, and so she's been in a wheelchair her whole life. When she can stand, and she stands up like this tall, and she's like, I was meant to be this way, because look at she's a children. She goes, we're all eye to eye, And when she would worship the Lord at the church, I'd be up there leading worship, and I'd always look at her, and I'd see her in the corner in a wheelchair with one hand spinning in a circle with her chair, going like this, and another hand with a flag, and just crying and just worshiping the Lord. So I always tell her, I still tell her when I see her, I go, you're my worship leader. Because it was just so great to have her always there, just to lead me in worship, because that's what she did. Yeah, it's amazing.
Powerful to say that others were your worship leader and they led the way for you. And this way is intimacy.
Yeah.
Authenticity, to be fully human, and intimacy. Would you say that's what you strive for?
For sure. To see a woman in a wheelchair in the corner doing what she was doing, she purposely would go in the corner because she didn't want. It was just between her and Jesus.
Right.
And to watch that, so inspirational. I mean, it would inspire anyone,
Absolutely.
I just happened to be facing that direction.
Yeah.
Everyone else was looking this way, and she was
Yeah.
behind them all, but I got to see that way.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, she still does it.
When you're leading worship, do you feel God's intimacy?
Sometimes. Sometimes I feel distracted.
Just like any of us.
Yeah. I keep a little picture of Jesus on my music stand to try and help me, because I'm easily distracted. If someone hits a bad note, I hear it, or this or that. So I just keep that picture, and just to keep reminding me why am I there, who am I there for, and all that stuff. Because I'm easily distracted.
It's a lot of powerful information to take in, and as you're sharing your journey through music and this theme of staying intimate with Jesus, staying humble, staying pure in some ways, or attempting to stay pure of heart and keep a heart of worship. You hit a few more things along your life that were challenging for you. And one you mentioned around the age 47, life hit you hard.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was just a big life shift at that moment. Like I felt like I needed to resign from the church I was leading worship at. There's just some things that were really hard for me to be there, where I felt like God was taking me this way and the church was going this way, and it was just, and I know God was telling me to go, but I stayed for too long, I think. And I mean, I had a wife and 3 young boys, and we had a salary, I had a mortgage payment, I had health insurance, and that's really hard to stop, and not know where you're going, and not know how you're gonna be provided for and all that stuff.
Right.
And so when I did it, finally, my wife and I both knew I had to do it, and she was on board with me, which was strange, because usually my wife would be like, no.
Oh, really?
Well,
she's more like the
she's
practical
the
one.
yeah. And she pays the bills and all that stuff.
She's like, no.
But she was like, no, this is the Lord. You need to stop. And I think when I did it, I finally did it. It was like all hell broke loose. Like we had to sell our house, and my oldest son was right around 16, I think, and his hormones were raging. He was just so mad at me. How could you do this to us? You know, this is the house we raised our boys in. All their friends were on that street. How could you do this to us? My son was like, my oldest son. The other boys were okay, but at least I thought they were okay, and then they were. But my oldest son, it was really hard on him, and I didn't even think about that when I did it, you know. But so because of that, I fell into this kind of depression, and then started having panic attacks, really bad panic attacks, and then there was like 6 months where I became kind of debilitated. Like I couldn't not be with my wife. Like she worked part-time at this pet grooming salon, and after the kids, when we get the kids off to school, I couldn't be at home alone. So I would drive her, or she would drive to work, and then I'd sit in the car, and if I could see her, I'd be okay. So I'd park the car where I could see her. She was a receptionist, and I could see her through the window, and I would just bring a blanket and a pillow, and I'd just read my Bible, and as long as I could see her, I'd be okay. And the Bible, the Lord gave me this dream one night where I put the Bible on my head like this, and He was literally washing my brain. And I kept reading Romans 8 over and over and over and over again for months, like probably 3 months. I read Romans 8 over and over again, and it was giving me so much peace to read that. And I'd literally like be at home sometimes on the couch, and I'd stick the Bible. I couldn't watch TV, nothing. I would just constantly have to be, I was so afraid. I had so much fear, so I'd constantly be wanting the Bible. And then I'd go later, I'd get a little bit better, and I'd go on walks. And then when we moved to San Juan Capistrano, and the mission became like my solace, you know, like that was where I could finally get away from having to be a visual with my wife and be able to drift off. But I'd go to the mission every day, 6 days a week. I went to the mission and just would sit there and read the Bible or read a book. And then I did get on medication after a while, and I slowly kind of got out of it. And I've never totally gotten out of it. Like it's still a little bit there, and I think I consider it like my helper in a way. Like it kind of keeps me, the reminder of that place has been helpful, because I realized in that time, I look back at it and I go, I was never closer to Jesus than that time. I was seeing things, I was hearing things. He would show me crazy. I was reading this book, and in the book, the author was explaining like how he was explaining about the cocoon and a butterfly type of thing, right? And in the book, she was explaining, the author was explaining how in the cocoon, this caterpillar has no idea what's going on. It's never been there before. But it's dark and it's enclosed and scary, and my panic attacks felt like I was being buried alive. That's how mine. Some people get different feelings. Mine was like claustrophobia, like I'm being buried alive. And
they were really powerful then.
Bad, like really, really bad. And this author was explaining about this feeling of a caterpillar in a cocoon, and then in the book she goes, but then when the cocoon opened up, I realized it was the hands of God protecting me, and I was in the safest place I could ever be. And that moment, it helped me so much. And I'm sitting reading this book and reading that part in the book, in the mission, and I look up on one of those ancient pillars, and there's a cocoon, and it starts shaking. And I go, no way. I'm not going to see a monarch butterfly come out of that cocoon. I've seen that on like a nature special or something. And right when I'm reading that about this, the hands of God opening up and the butterfly coming out, this cocoon breaks open and this butterfly comes out. Wow. And I'm like, and talk about feeling the peace of God. I was like, you're with me right now. You let me read this and then see this at the same time. And I was so focused on the Lord because I needed the Lord to just to breathe. And it was like that season. Sometimes I look back at it longing for it again. Not that I long to have that pain or that fear, but what came with that was so awesome. You know, just my senses to the Lord were so much more heightened than they are now, you know. Yeah. So
you were cocooned for a while, set aside.
I was cocooned. I thought I was being buried alive, but
but it would have a similar feeling.
Yeah, but he had
like I'm dying. I'm literally everything about me is changing. It doesn't make sense. Life doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. And then you found a new way. You were reborn.
Yeah, I heard this man say that once. I was born again.
Yeah. Maybe we can be that several times.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty neat.
So with that season, and now that it feels a little better, but it's still in the back of your mind a little bit, you feel it. What is the value of that for you now? And would you have still made that same decision to leave the church if you knew you were going to enter that season?
I kind of feel like everything that I've gone through has been the grace of God. Like, leave it up to me. I probably make bad decisions all the time, but I think he helps me to make the right decision. Or you know, making the bad decisions, he can still use that for the good in the long run. So it's just by the grace of God go I, really. It's like there's nothing in me that great or that good. It's just this man, John Wimber, he was talking about when we raise our hands in worship. And he was saying, like, you know, most people, you're raising your hands in worship, sometimes you're receiving a gift and you're like this, sometimes you're like this, and you're praising God. And he goes, but a lot of times with me, I got my hands up and I give up, I surrender. And I love that because it's like, that's the posture that, you know, I just want to take every day and just go, I give up, not my will, but thy will be done. Because my will sucks, your will is perfect.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to put too much stake in any decisions I've ever made because he rescues me daily. But I do know that if I surrender, if I say I give up, you know, if I take that posture, then it's surrendering your will. And so I just want to, if I can just do that, then maybe I'll follow his lead more than my lead, you know.
And then it starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes. There's
For
a lot
sure.
of trust in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that season, what helped the medication, and then where did your career lead you to?
Well, it's funny, I don't think of it as a career as much anymore, like I did when I was making records and getting royalties and all the things that happens when you do that. But now I just think of it as like, I'm just living out what I was called to do. And the Lord's providing. And it's amazing that I've been able to raise a family and own a home and do what I've gotten to do and doing what I do. And but now it's coming to this place of being older, and whatever comes next, I don't know. But I don't really care. in a good way. You know what I mean? I'm not afraid of like not having something to do. There's always something to do, and so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you could, in terms of the journey of intimacy with God, in terms of staying humble, in terms of surrendering, what would be some, because often in life, each human goes through their journey where these are lessons we're designed to experience and learn. Some of us resist it, some of us are more open.
Mm-hmm.
Are there practical tips that you would give people to live in a state where there was a place of surrender and humility and intimacy with God?
Well, I remember when I was in the thick of anxiety, the verses in the Bible that were always highlighted to me were the ones about we're strangers here, and don't put too much stake on the things of this earth, that we're just passing through, and momentary light affliction for eternal weight of glory. Those the verses that were always talking about the not yet, talking about the kingdom to come. And I feel like I think those are so important to give people peace today. Like if we preach the kingdom of God, and of course we say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We want the now and the not yet. But we also know through scripture that the now there will be trouble. And that the not yet is, I mean, even if we're blessed to live 80, 90 years or something on earth, it's nothing compared to what's coming. And I try and encourage, especially musicians, that feel discouraged because the music industry is falling apart and nobody can make a living playing music, all that stuff. I always tell them, I say, well, I had this prophetic guy one time, not one time, I was a target at Vineyard because it's a very charismatic Pentecostal church. And I was a target because I was on the stage, and so I'd always get a word, like all these all these prophetic guys that would always come be the guest speaker. They'd always give me a word, and they were always pretty grandiose. And your songs are going to go around the world, all this stuff. And some, it's happened a little bit, but I remember asking the Lord one day, what's that all about? Like, what do I do with that? Like, it kind of tweaked me a little bit, like. Hearing these things, and then you're expecting this big moments to happen, and I heard the Lord's voice in my head say, "What makes you think it's for this life?" And I was like, I never even thought about that. Like you always think like when someone has a prophetic word, it's going to happen, like in this life.
Now,
And it was like the Lord was telling me, quit thinking so small. Like it's so you're an eternal being. And it was so freeing for me. Because it was just like it's gonna be better to experience in this state of perfection and no competition and no envy and no sin, to experience some of the things that God has promised us through prophetic word or even through scripture. It's like he's setting us up for when we're meant to live. Like this is a vapor. It's nothing. And yes, we have a lot to learn. Yes, he's perfecting us and all that stuff, but the promise is that we will be perfect. No matter, how many lives have been cut so short when you think about babies dying or whatever. It's like they didn't get a chance to grow in this life and learn all these lessons and all that stuff, but they're brought immediately into the presence of the Lord, and they're brought into the kingdom of God, into this place where we're all gonna be, and for those who say yes to Jesus,
It's pulling back instead of seeing it so small. This is my promise, this is when it's going to come. When we pull back and really sense who God is, we see the eternal. We see the big picture, and disappointment and emptiness, and like it all just goes.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah. It's going to be okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think some of the people that suffer the most in this life are really the ones you got to watch. Like when I talked about the lady in the wheelchair, and you watch that person and you go, she's never been married. She's 60 in her 60s. She's never walked. You know, she's never gone surfing. She's never got to do things that we all get to do whenever we want. And she has this joy that doesn't make any sense. I've always referred to her as she's proof of God on wheels. She just is.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense. You should be bitter.
Yeah.
You know? And she's just not. So she's like, no, she's a gift to everyone around her, because she's showing everyone around her that this isn't it. You know? So I just think the emphasis that we should be really telling people is to look up. You know?
Is when we do, we have joy.
We have joy, and then it maybe makes our problems not seem so big. You know?
Our little problems.
Yeah.
They do feel big.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. And so could you share a little bit about your newest album that's come out, and what that is about, what the message is?
Well, I've released a couple records in the last 2 years, but the one I think probably resonates more with just me personally, the one that I'm really happy that I got to do, came out last year, and it's called Solace. And it's a whole record of prayers that my friend wrote. And they're not my songs. I wrote 2 songs on there. The rest were all his. And there are all these prayers that he had these songs around for a while, and a couple of them were on this record from the past. But there are all these really beautiful prayers. And so I said, I'd love to record some of those songs with just you on piano and a string, like a quartet or a trio. And so we did that, and it was really fun and beautiful. The songs are so beautiful, and so that one is one that I've been able to, like, I was just in Pismo Beach, and I played at this winery I played at church Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. We played at a winery up in Arroyo Grande, and this woman was there, and her husband and her daughter, and they said, we bought your first record back in '91 or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry about that, because it's not that good. And the husband said, my wife has terminal cancer, and there's a song, an old hymn that I recorded on that first record called Precious Lord, and he said, would you sing it for her? And I said, I'll try. Of course I will. And I tried, and I screwed it up because I hadn't played it forever. And but then I said, but I want you to have this record of my friends' songs. You know, they helped me a lot when I was going through the dark night of the soul kind of thing. And so I don't know why I shared all that, but anyway, so I gave her that record. So if you're asking about any record, I would, if there was anything pointing to something, that's probably the record in my whole career where I'd say, if I think it could bear fruit. And not that the other ones don't. I'm just saying this one, for people that are going through, especially going through anxiety or panic or fear, this is the one where you can put on, and it might be like putting the Bible on your head, because it's mostly scripture. And anyways.
And bring calm to that deep, deep place, the dark night of the soul. That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, there's a song called Valley of Vision. It's a famous old prayer that he put music to. He didn't write the words. and those lyrics, unbelievable. So that's probably the best, my favorite song on that track, on that record. The other record is just songs I wrote during COVID. And, and then went and recorded like 5 more songs and put that out as a record. But it's okay.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so
for
much.
being a part of this today and sharing your wisdom.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much we gained from this, an understanding of intimacy, how to be with God in anxiety, and how to really surrender to let God's will be done.
Amen.
Above and beyond right now,
Yeah.
but soon to come.
Right.